Shalom, shalom, family. Congregation Bay D.C.B. presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. Date, May 27, 2023. Location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. To contact us for more information, you can contact us at 347-622-9090 or on our email, info@baydcb.org. Once again, Congregation Bay D.C.B. presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. The date is May 27, 2023. The location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can contact us at 347-622-9090 or our email, info@baydcb.org. This is a time of praise and joy and coming together between brothers and sisters. All are invited. Come out with your best spirit of praise. Hallelujah.
By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying.
Shalom, shalom, family, and welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of Congregation CHOKMAH BINAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Grateful to this mighty King for life once again, that we got through another week and now we're beginning a new week, and I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth will continue to guide and protect us all. To everyone out on internet land and to everyone listening, just wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, an early one, that being that our program is pre-recorded a little bit before, a good while before everything starts out. So thanking the Creator of heaven and earth once again for life, food, clothing, and shelter. And I pray that the Creator will continue to be with us all and protects us. Hallelujah. So I hope that everyone is out there. Everyone out there is doing well, that everyone is in good health, good physical health, and that everyone is actually in good spirits. I know it's the spring season, and you know, with the spring season brings a lot of hope and people want to get in shape again, and people making types of promises and things that they say they want to do before the summer is out. So I pray that all your wishes and the things that you have in your heart, that they will come to fruition. And for those who suffer during this time because of what we know as hay fever or allergies, I pray that the Most High God be with you too. All the pollen that's out there, you know, it's not fun to many of you. So I pray that the Most High God be with all of our people wherever they might be. And I pray that the Most High God will protect us and guide us all. At this time, we're going to move straight ahead, and I'm going to pass it over to one of my teachers and one of my mentors, who will be going over Psalms 128 today, and he will also go over the previous Sidra, Sidra Shemini, even my teacher, Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Due respect to the platform on the D.C.B. channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Ariel Ben Yissaskar, host Chief Uzael, to the Princess Chiefs, Kohanim, the Rabbinate, Maureen, brothers and sisters, visitors, greet you all in the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to first start off by saying, as I usually do, Adonai Septai Tidakum Piyagi Tilateka, O Lord, under my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. I'll be sharing some insights in reference to the last Sidra, Shemini. I know many of us went to a nice, festive season here, and some of us that went through the Passover season is to one of the great revelations that took place in our history, and which takes place basically 50 days after the Pesach Passover offering. And what's interesting is that we open up the book of Leviticus, and the portion I'll be covering, I'll just share with you so that people could go back over it and study it, because I'm only going to highlight just a few excerpts here and there. We'll be covering Leviticus, the 9th chapter, first verse, going and completing the 11th chapter to the 47th verse of Leviticus. And the Haftorah that goes along with it, for those that might follow Ashkenazic custom, is 2 Samuel's 6th chapter, first verse, going all the way to the 7th chapter, 17th verse. Some that follow a Sephardic custom, with also starting 2 Samuel's the 6th chapter, first verse, but they will end it a lot sooner, which would be the 19th verse. Very interesting. And I will touch on some of that, since the psalm I'll be covering that goes along with the Sidra Shemini is the 128th psalm, which is very interesting, and it's a very short psalm, basically 6 verses. So I shouldn't bore your ears down too much this time. So with that, I'm going to start in the beginning of Shemini. Now, Shemini itself means 8. So we still did everything from Israel's liberation. From Israel's liberation, from the time of the revelation at Mount Sinai, and the atonement for this sin of the golden calf. We did everything to reach this particular point in time. So when we think about the tabernacle, we're talking about a year, basically, a little short of an exact year of Exodus from Egypt, when the tabernacle was erected. It was erected in the 2nd year. And all our travels from the land of Egypt was to reach this particular point in time before we go into the Holy Land. So this is the zenith of our point in time that we're supposed to reach. It's the first goal. See, most of us think that the goal is going directly into the land, but that wasn't the goal of coming out of Egypt first. The first goal was to meet with God at the mountain, and that was our goal. And when we met with God at the mountain, to keep that relationship strong and high, we had to reach this point in stage in our lives. So we finally reached this stage in our life. But it's some interesting things that goes on in this particular stage in our life. So I would try to bring some of the things out. As we go and look at the beginning of the 9th chapter, it says, "And it came to pass on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. And he said unto Aaron, Take thee a bull calf for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering, without blemish, and offer them before the Lord. And unto the children of Israel thou shalt speak, saying, Take ye a he-goat for a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both of the first year, without blemish, for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for a peace offering, to sacrifice before the Lord, and a meal offering mingled with oil, for today the Lord appeared to you." Now, what's interesting is that Moses got all his commands from the Creator. He's setting up the tabernacle every day. He's inaugurating the tabernacle, setting it in position, making a sacrifice for the tabernacle, also setting up the people that are going to actually work in the tabernacle. But yet, the Creator has not begun to dwell and set within that place that was dedicated for his name to dwell there, so he could dwell amongst us. So we did all these preparations, but Moses telling Aaron, we have not reached that zenith point yet until the Creator accepts and shows his appreciation to us in a manner that we will recognize that he accepts our efforts and our work. So now, when we look even further, it said, and they brought that which Moses commanded before the tent of meeting, and all the congregation drew near and stood before the Lord. And Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commanded that he shall do, that the glory of the Lord may appear unto you. All right, so when we talk about the glory of the Lord, you know, that bears a lot of discussion. What is really the glory of the Lord? And what it means to you when you say the glory of the Lord appears to you? All right. We have a lot of people in different aspects of different religions that say, well, the Lord told me, I spoke to the Lord, and this is the message I got from the Lord. But here it is that Moses making a specific, statement here. When you talk about the glory of the Lord going to appear, and not only to one individual, but to the community as a whole. All right. And Moses said unto Aaron, draw near unto the altar and offer thy sin offering and thy burnt offering, and make atonement for thyself and for the people, and present the offerings of the people and make atonement for them as the Lord commanded. Now, what's so important here as we look at is that this is the first time now Aaron get a chance to actually operate in the capacity that he was inaugurated in. Before that, Moses did everything. But right now, it's only at this point in time that Aaron begins to officiate. And I'd like to just go just a little bit more into that and, explore that just a little bit before we move on. So Aaron drew near unto the altar and slew the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself and the sons of Aaron, presented the blood unto him. And he dipped his finger in the blood and put it upon the horns of the altar and poured out the blood at the base of the altar. But the fat and the kidneys and the lobe of the liver of the sin offering he made smoke upon the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. And the flesh and the skin were burnt with fire without the camp. He slew the burnt offering, and Aaron's son delivered unto him the blood, and he dashed it against the altar round about. And they delivered the burnt offering unto him, piece by piece, and the head, and he made them smoke upon the altar. And he washed the inwards and the legs, and made them smoke upon the burnt offering on the altar. Now, this is not a dainty job that Aaron's doing. Anytime people talk about sacrificing the priest and operating as a priest, then their hands got to get involved and mixed up with, imagine all that meat and stuff and different things and dipping your head in blood. Some things you could discuss, say, well, what does it smell like? Because sometimes you could just be in a butcher shop too long without touching anything, and you could smell like the butchered meat around you, just being around it. So was that the case in this situation? Where the sacrifice is going on? And then we know under normal circumstances you have bugs and flies coming around. Anytime you're doing slaughtering and barbecuing, you got all this going on. Can you imagine, would that be a situation like that? Because if a fly would have got, upon the bar saw the meat, what would it be? What kind of meat that would be if enough of that come up on it? So, and imagine this is done out in the open, not with a ceiling, out in the open. So just to imagine the whole idea of the sacrifices that's going on at this time. And there had to be some, unique experiences, that anomalies that was going on at this point in time when we did offer up, as opposed to a guy that's doing a regular barbecue. But let's go on. Just something to think about and talk about as you go on. And after we're gonna skip down just a little bit. All right, and we're gonna pick it up from the last, the 22nd verse. And Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people. This after he did all these offerings, and blessed them. And he came down from offering the sin offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings. Now, he said, this is what he did. He offered it up, but we don't read yet, what happened, how was it offered up. We don't read whether fire came down yet at this point in time. So this is a lot of times when we say, think about Aaron offer it up, but how did he offer it up at this time? Did he actually burn it up at this point in time? A lot of times, like I say from time to time, Torah don't always follow a strong chronological order. It just highlights certain excerpts that's important to the individual to really concentrate and learn and pay attention to. And so when Aaron blessed, and this is the first time he said, and Aaron lifted up his hands towards the people and blessed them. All right. Now, so if he blessed them, then what blessing did he use? We read about the priestly blessing that's given in which is 3 words, 5 words, and 7 words. Just for the sake of being brief, we just said the Yehudah prayer and the blessing prayer. But the prayer that we have, that we normally said in every synagogue, every day, every morning, when you read the Amidah, you always have those 3, 4 blessings. And the priest was told to bless the people in a certain fashion and way, and the final blessing would be peace. So when he blessed the people, we don't see the formula that's used here, but we see later on the formula that the priest must use in blessing the people. So, and the 23rd verse of that same, in the 9th chapter, it says, and Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting and came out and blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto all the people, not some, all of them. And there came forth fire from before the Lord and consumed upon the altar the burnt offering and the fat. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. Now, this is a marvel thing. During the preparation time, Moses had to offer up and burn fire with regular fire as we get ready to go through. But this is the first time you read where the actual fire that was on the altar in the inauguration of that particular day, this is the first time that you read that actually fire consumed it. But yet it said Aaron offered it up. If he offered up, what's there to burn? So we know that the offering that he did, when he did what he was supposed to do, he haven't as yet kindled any fire upon that altar of all the stuff he's supposed to offer up on that day. And yet he went to bless the people. And then after that, we read here in this particular verse that fire came out from the Creator and consumed all the stuff that's supposed to be burnt upon the altar. So we got to pay close attention to this particular point here, because a lot of times there's a lot of controversy and discussion in reference to this particular area. And we go into the 10th, after people saw that and they fell on their faces, then in the 10th chapter, it said, and Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took each of them his censer and put fire therein and laid incense upon thereon and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. Now, this is something here to consider. What they're saying that And that's why I say chronological order is always a thing. We got that, we have a lot of discussions about when we read Torah, because everything don't seem like it's in a certain type of chronological order. And you say, we just read where fire came down and consumed up the stuff. And we know that fire, that Aaron didn't kindle no particular fire himself. You didn't read where Aaron even brought any fire to the offerings. He just did what he's supposed to do. The wood's in place, the altar stuff is in place, but you never read where he actually brought any fire at the point in time where the Creator himself did a wonder and exalted Aaron, in that sense. Well, the days that Moses was there, we know Moses had to bring up some fire and offer up an altar, part of their initiation and inauguration process. So now, when we look further into this here, why we know that Nadab and Abihu is Aaron's sons. Why even mention that they're his sons in the first place? We already know that's information already given. That means that they're reflecting their father in a good way or a negative way, or the father responsible for them in that sense or not. So there's a lot of things that could be discussed in this area, because we already know that that's their father. We learned that from way back when God called them out. It said Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. And what's unique is that put fire there. They had their own. Each took them his senses. I mean, what did it mean by his senses? Is it part of the material that actually was made directly for the Mishkan with the vessels and utensils, or could have been the material like we read about later on in the matter of Dathan and Korah, where all the other guys had their own senses, because we had 250 princes with 250 senses, and those wasn't the senses that was made for the Mishkan. So now, and when it's specified in this case here that Nadab and Abihu took their own senses, it would imply that this is not the census that was part of the Mishkan census. That's number one. Their own censer pan. They took their own. And then they said they put fire in. And let's read a little bit further. And said, in second verse, and there came forth fire from before the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, this is it that the Lord spoke, saying, through them that are nigh unto me, I will be sanctified, and for all the people I'll be glorified. And Aaron held his peace. Now, when we read about this story here, not only the tragedy that we read about in this particular story, but one of the elements that I find really intriguing in this particular area is that here it is, Moses, is telling Aaron the reason. Now, Aaron seeing this, as well as all the people seeing this happen to these guys in the most important day of their life. And if we could make an analogy, but then I'm going to just read a few more verses and then I'll bring out some points for you to discuss a little bit further. All right. It said, the fourth verse, and Moses called Mishael and Elizaphan, the sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said unto them, draw nigh, carry your brothers from before the sanctuary out of the camp. So they drew nigh and carried them in their tunics out of the camp, as Moses had said. And Moses said unto Aaron and to his son, unto Eleazar and unto Ithamar his sons, let not the hair of your head go loose, neither in your clothes, that ye die not, and that he be not wroth with all the congregation, but let your brethren, the whole house of Israel, bewail the burning, which the Lord had kindled, and ye shall not go out from the door of the tent of meeting, lest you die. For the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you. And they did according to the word of the Lord. Now, what is so heart-wrenching is a couple of elements I'd like to bring out before we go into the next portion. And one of the elements I'd like to bring out in reference to this is that when we left Egypt, and before we left, the death of the firstborn, and it said there was no house in Egypt where people did not cry, because they had, no house in Egypt where there was not one dead. So people were crying, all throughout the land of Egypt. And you say, well, what about the firstborn in an animal? Why select the firstborn in an animal? But anyway, that's another story to consider. And yet, when we come across the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, and come on dry land, we're celebrating because we know the Egyptians were dead and washed upon the shore. And we're celebrating death of another people. Seemed kind of callous a little bit, but we had a right to celebrate. Like I brought out a little bit last time I spoke. And yet, here is Aaron, who's a priest, and his sons are priests. And at the dedication, he's told not to, mourn lest he die. Okay, accept it as the will of the Creator, but to go further, not to even accompany his sons to the grave site, because he's a priest. So can you imagine the agony? Or the brothers, looking at the older brothers, 2 of them die. If the Egyptians just had one guy die in their household, and Aaron had half of his children die in his household in one day. Can we see that and fathom the actual emotional trauma that Aaron had to deal with and still perform his job? And he's told to do his job. And he's told that the people, let them mourn. But if he do anything like that, it would bring sin upon the people. Now, you lost your child. That's hard enough. And then it said they brought strange fire. What made the fire strange? Sarah. So those are some of the things to consider and think about. What made it strange? And it was that bad of a crime? Obviously, the Creator knew that it was that bad. And he said, "You'll be sanctified by those that come nigh me." So much discussion back and forth about why and the emotional trauma on a family. And yet we celebrate other deaths. And then we celebrate, salvation from death. And yet the man in the most highest moment see his son slain by the Creator. And this I'm supposed to be your man. I'm supposed to be your high priest. And this the way you do me with my son at this moment. That could be mind-boggling for somebody that's not focused on understanding that everything that's God do is for the better. That's really traumatic. And I dare to say that the majority of the people could not go through that at that point in time. And then what's more, you say, okay, there's a lot of discussions about where did they die at when fire came out and how far they entered. Because they had this sensor pan. So if they had the fire and they had their own sensor pans, then the first stop should be at the golden altar. That should be the first stop. Because the incense is used on the inside, not on the outside. So hence, question, did their bodies drop there? And if it dropped inside, when did it defile the place? Did it drop in the courtyard? Or was they jolted out so far outside the sanctuary where people could see the fire coming from the Creator, and say, well, if they're inside, how did the fire hit them? And then another question that could come up. Was it 2 fires? One to consume the stuff on the altar and one to come from God? Or there's one fire that's doing 2 different jobs at the same time? Coming in from the tabernacle itself, going out through the tabernacle and the Mishkan, going towards the altar, as well as taking Nadab and Abihu out at the same time. Because we know that Aaron did not bring fire to that particular sacrifice, as we read here. So there's a lot of discussion to go on, to go back and forth, and say, well, and what are the thoughts on, so bring that to your leaders and teachers, in various communities, and talk amongst yourselves. And then say, how would you feel after that happened to you at your greatest moment? That you could not even, your sons are slain, not only your son, but you're talking about half of your household at one time. And you're supposed to be close to the one that slayed your sons. And you're not allowed to not mourn, show no outward mourning. You're not allowed to show no outward mourning. And you're not allowed to accompany them to the grave site. So those are some of the things to think about as we go forward. I don't want to focus on it too much, but I'm just saying this is a lot of things, and there's a lot of insights to be brought out. And just looking at the time, I don't have much time to go in. That's why I said discuss it a lot more. And we get one other area I want to finish up in this particular area, is that, and the Lord spoke to Aaron saying, drink no wine, nor strong drink, thou nor thy son with thee, when you go into the tent of meeting, that ye die not. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, and that ye may put a difference between the holy and the common, and between the clean, and between the unclean and the clean, and that ye may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord has spoken unto them by the hand of Moses. All right. And one thing I like to go, and I'm skip down in the same chapter. But what we find here, because Aaron was, why you don't means, and he was silent, but what kind of silence that is? Sometimes not saying something is saying a lot. So when a person get quiet, what do that mean? When something that you should outwardly exhibit a type of emotion for, you just told, this is what happened, this is what it is, and you're told, and you become silent, and then you're further told not to mourn, not to show no outward sign of mourning. So those are some of the things that are discussed. But and then Creator, knowing Aaron's heart, pretty much, this one time one particular time he got a law concerning Torah before Moses got. And Moses was considered the lawgiver, but Aaron got an additional set of rules concerning the area that he's going to be functioning in, and the capacity he can function in, before Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses himself, the great prophet, our teacher. So I'm just going to read a couple more in this 16th verse. And Moses diligently inquired for the he-goat of the sin offering, and behold, it was burnt. And he was angry with Eleazar and with Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, that was left, saying, before we get to that, all right, it's an interesting thing they bring in the Hebrew, in that 16th verse. It used the word, darash, and which means, and we got a similar thing we talk about is investigation, to inquire, but it means inquire in like a serious investigation, in this particular portion. And let me see here. What was it, 16? All right. 12. Oh, yeah. Just one moment. Okay. Okay. All right. So now, the interesting thing about when you talk about when Moses inquire and investigate, and use the word, Rosh Harash, and those two words are similar, and since they're similar in actual meaning, they're actually similar in meaning. Those are two particular words there, and but it means a very strong investigation. And as we look at the strong investigation in it, Rosh Harash, it has a asterisk in between it, and these words means to investigate, and that means that, and it's there's so many words in the Tanakh. I wrote it down. I just looked it up for this particular lesson, but in the actual Torah portion itself, you got 79,980 words. All right. So this particular words here, these words are spelled the same, and and basically have the same relative meaning. The Rosh Harash, it has an asterisk between it, and they consider that the middle of the Torah. Now we know if we count every word that's listed in the Torah itself, in the middle of the Torah, we'll come with again the book of Leviticus, the 15th chapter, with the word Yesod. Yesod is like a foundation, So what lesson we could gain out of the Rosh Harash? And Moses, he knows before he even spoke, before he made the accusation, before he jumped to conclusions, he went and looked himself thoroughly, and it means over again. And before we draw a conclusion on things, we're supposed to actually really dig deep and look and look for the truth of the matter as much as we can. So what he came up with when he looked diligently, he said, we had a lot of burning going on this day, but he recognized that this was the particular sin offering that was burnt, that wasn't supposed to be burnt. Now the job belonged to his brother Aaron, but he addressed it to his nephews. And the reason they say this is the middle part of the Torah is, let me see, I did it write that down. I got it's so many words. That's about 89 words in Torah that has the exact same spelling, and they repeat it back to back against each other. And between those 89 words, these are is within it 45th. So that means they're between the ones behind it and the ones in front of it that has the same pattern of double words being used, the same spelling. So that's why sometimes they say in the middle, because if you're caught in the middle between, I would say, a rock and a hard place, you got to assess certain areas. All right. So when we look at this area here, Moses made that diligent search and make the accusation, but he inquiring, but not from the head person that should be in charge, which is Aaron, but to his nephews. And Moses was caught up and angry. So imagine, these guys lost a brother. Aaron lost a son, but Aaron's older than Moses. But Moses didn't confront Aaron, he confronted his nephews. And he was angry. And there's very few times you read where Moses is getting angry. And sometimes, this time he did exercise a little diligence, but he still waxed angry. And then when we look further into it, when this question is directed to these individuals, and it said, and he gave us a reason why they should have ate it. The 19th verse, it says, and Aaron spoke unto Moses, behold, this day have they offered their sin offering. This is what Aaron brings to Moses. This day they offered their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord. And there have befallen me such things as these. And if I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been well pleasing in the sight of the Lord? And when Moses heard that it was well pleasing in his sight. Normally, you say, well, why would Moses go ahead and say, it's okay with me? Instead of saying it's okay with God too. So those are some of the things we got to look at. And then what we have here, and I spoke on it before in the past, that we have a first time where oral interpretation of a law that is written overrided. This is the first time in our history as a people, from the time we gotten written law, when something's written down, you say, oh, we ain't gonna change that. But here, this is the first time, in the first instance, but it's not the last, but it's the first instance where something that's written down, what should be done, that you got somebody to say, look, because the way I feel, the rationale I come up with, I don't think that'd have been right. And that means that though he was told not to outwardly mourn, did he mourn? He told outwardly not to outwardly show any sign, but how did he feel? And then how did the rest of the brothers feel? They went along with their father, as opposed to the other one didn't go along with their father. So there's a lot of things to discuss there as much, as well. And the last part of that thing is the dietary law. Dietary law talks about the actual meats you're supposed to eat and not supposed to eat. And I spoke on it a little bit before in reference to the dietary law. The meats you're supposed to eat and not supposed to eat. And one of the interesting things is that most people think because we eat kosher, we eat healthy. That's what most people think. And now, I grant you, some things you shouldn't be eating that could be detrimental, and some things that's permissible could be detrimental for you. But one of the things, and I always tell people to go back over it, but just to highlight it, how we know that the dietary law, and it basically tell you about holiness, about ritual purity. That's what it speaks about, more so. The reason we have a dietary law is about holiness and ritual purity. But one of the things, and I spoke on it in the past, how do we know this dietary law is not man's idea, but God's idea? Because we got an example of one particular creature in there, such as the pig, that described that it's cloven-footed, part of the hoof, but do not chew at the cud. We got other animals that ruminate and chew the cud, but they ain't got the footwork that's agreeing in it. So we got three different types of animals to describe pretty much, and more maybe, that chew, that chew the cud, but don't have the right type of footwork in this in the dietary law. But only one animal on the whole planet fit the pig's description. Only one. And Moses, having been all the way around the world, he don't know all the animals on the planet. So this had to be a God-given dietary law, because no other animal fit that description of the pig. Everybody else, either got paws and don't chew the cud, or chew the cud, but they got hooves and stuff, or they got toes. But that's the only one that actually will look the same on outwardly. And then when we talk about the fowls, it enumerates 20 fowls in the book of the dietary law. And when it enumerates the 20 fowls, that means all those that's not enumerated, by proxy of not being enumerated, should be all right to eat. But you got to know exactly what the fowls and what that he enumerated that's not okay. And when it comes to the fish, we told when it comes to that, fins and scales. Simple as that. That means that don't worry about looking for every kind of fish and see about this detail and that detail. Only thing we need to know, you got fins and you got scales. He's all right, no matter how bad he looked. You know, it's all right, it's permissible. And then when we get for those that follow, rabbinic type of kashrut diet, you know that it's considered par. When it gets to locusts, and grasshoppers, those are the insects that they say is permissible, but they describe them. So how good are you all in knowing about insects? And certain people in Africa today still eat a certain type of locust. So it makes a difference. It makes a difference, and it makes a difference. We're gonna go to the book of Samuel just a little bit, the 6, just to read a little bit about the Haftorah, and then I'm gonna do the 6 verses that's in Psalms. But in the 6th chapter, I'm just gonna bring out a couple of things of 2 Samuel. All right. And David again gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him to Bahaleh Yehudah, Judah, to bring up from thence the ark of the Lord, whereupon is called the name, even the name of the Lord of hosts, that sitteth upon the cherubim. So that's how they describe in the same ark, pretty much in this particular portion. So when he bring it up, but goes with people. It's going to be supposed to be a big celebration, just like here. So this some things that we recognize, and we know the ark was taken by the Philistines and sitting in a certain spot for some years, and David decided to bring it back. And it said they were sitting there even before Saul became king, and they set the ark of the God upon a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in the hill. And Uzzah and Achiah, the sons of Abinadab, drove the new cart, and they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was in the hill, with the ark of the God. And Achiah went before the ark, and David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord with all the manner of instruments made of cypress wood and harps, and with psalm trees and timbrels, and with sistrels, and with cymbals. And when they came to the threshing floor, a knock horn, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the ox stumbled, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God. And David was displeased because the Lord had broken forth upon Uzzah, and that place is called Perez Uzzah unto this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, how shall the ark of the Lord come to me? All right. So now I'm just going to leave that one right there and before we go into the Psalms, and let's talk about some of the things. One, some of the things we need to bring out and point out is that how is it that the ark been there in their place ever since the Philistines sent it back? Now the Philistines supposed to have put mice and emeralds, part of their plagues that they had upon them, in the ark on a cart that's moved by milk cows. That means cows, not bulls. That means that you don't usually send a milk cow, that means that they got calves nearby, because normally if they hear the mooing of the calf, they want to give them suck. But the Philistines decided to get very spiritual, which it was at that time, and put the ark on the cart with 2 milk cows, and brought, and said wherever way the ark go, because they were shooting it from city to city, but wherever the ark go, they said, look here, we're gonna go ahead and let it go this way. And that was a prize they took from us in war, and it was sitting there ever since. So one question is, if this was before Saul became king, that they had the ark, how was they functioning all this time? Those are some of the questions that come out. you know, that the ark is over here at this guy's house. You still got that Mishkan, the tabernacle, you know, where Eli was. So did you worship in the tabernacle, or did you worship, you know, at this guy's house? Or you decide to worship wherever you want to worship? Now, mind you, throughout the time of Saul, and then until David decided to get it after you get established as a stronghold as a king. And if we check carefully, it's not right away in David's life that he decided to get it. So those are some of the things to think about. But what we have in common is tragedy at the most, you know, exciting event, when people's intentions are to do what they consider right. And you say, well, okay, the ark stumbled. Why? Because he touched the ark that he was put to death, when the ark was led by his father's house all the time. I'm sure they had to every now and then went over there and did a couple of things there, here and there. Well, the ark wasn't as holy when it was over there, or it got holier because of this area. And then how could David make a mistake when he knew that the priest supposed to, when he corrected later on that the priest carried it? But how did David make a mistake? Did he figure the only time the Levites would carry it is because they was traveling in the wilderness, and since they're no longer in the wilderness, that they're in the land, that doesn't apply anymore? And especially when they crossed over, as we read in the part of the Haftorah, not too long about Joshua and them crossing over, that the priest actually brought an ark across the Jordan when it's supposed to be the sons of Kohath, who's not priests, bearing the ark while they was going through the wilderness. So at that time, the sons of Kohath were supposed to carry the ark, but the priest carrying it across the Jordan. And then after that, how it was moved in the land, it was moved. We don't get any kind of information on that. And then we read where Eli's sons took it out for the battle, and the Philistines took it, and they had it wherever they was doing and touching this and everything like that. And then they brought it, they sent it back, and it's at this guy's house, and it'd been there for a while. Then when David tried to bring it back, saying one of the guys who was, and mind you, these not Levites, you know, Abinadab, Uzzah, Akio, none of them are Levites, much more priests. So why over there? And you see, you know, where it was in Bahale, Yehudah, Judah. So what's going on there? So much stuff going on. But I'll just bring out a few points to bring out that David had learned eventually, and he brought the ark back. But those are some of the tragic things to discuss. Now I'm going to go straight to the Psalm 128 and them 6 verses in 128. But there's a lot to discuss in there and go back over because there's so much history involved with at that particular period in time. So 128 Psalm is only 6 verses, but it's related to the Sidra, Shemini. You know, and 8th, you know, 7 is completion, but 8th is the new beginning. So let's read here. If you got it.
It reads, Shir Hama'alot, Ashrei Kal, Yerei Yehovah, Aholek, Bid Rakai. Verse 1, a song of ascents. Happy is everyone that feareth Yehovah, that walketh in his ways. When thou eatest the labor of thy hands, happy shalt thou be, and it shall be well with thee. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine in the innermost parts of thy house.
Before we get too far. All right. I like to look at that second verse. All right. All right. And you know, well, first is the first verse. The first verse itself. All right. When they talk about, happy is everyone that feareth the Lord. That means contented, and then it's like a reverence, have a strong reverence. And then when it goes on to the second verse, and it talks about when thou eatest the labor of thy hands, happy shalt thou be. Well, it uses the term for the man here, even though in the English you don't see it too much, but but it's talking about the man. When you use the term, instead of Ish, they use the word, instead of Adam, they use the word Gabor, Geber, and let me make sure I got your, Gaber Yeh Adonai. All right, so it bless, and it goes on. We're going to get into the area about blessing as we get to it. Blessing of the man. So we're going to be talking more about the individual being blessed for fearing, but the word I'm going to focus on is Gaber. Gaber itself comes from the word Gibor, which is a warrior. In order for you to actually be a godly man, you got to be a strong man. You're going against the grain, and you recognize it's something that's non-corporal, that's non-physical, that supersedes you, and that you got to answer and be accountable to. And the Creator is assuring the individual, you're not weak because you believe in the Creator. You're not weak because, you say, I fear God. You're not weak because you say, I'm looking for righteousness and justice. It takes strength to stand up for that. It's weakness when you just give in to your passion haphazardly, as opposed to being able to control your passions. So this is one of the things it's talking about, that when a man that fears and have that awe reverence for the Creator, he becomes strong. You think Aaron was weak when Moses told him that? And said, this is the thing the Lord did. It said he was silent. How much strength it took for him to hold that in and still perform his job. He had a bunch of other sacrifices to do that day. The dedication of Yehudah, for one, as well as the other stuff that was going on that particular day. And, and the Rosh Chodesh thing, gonna be more Rosh Chodeshes. So, so most we consider that it's the new moon sin offering. That's the one that they were supposed to deal with. But it was quite a few sin offerings. And sin offerings don't always mean that somebody did something wrong, but a sin offering also means purification. And you had a sin offering for the new moon as well. So we know that only one sin offering going to be continually all the time. So it took a lot of strength for Aaron to do what he did. And that's what it's talking about. If you're a godly individual, if you're a God-fearing individual, then you got to be a warrior for God. We always talk about prayer warriors, but we're rarely talking about a warrior to stand up, on behalf of God. Though the God Creator don't need us, it's just it's good to say, I'm on the right side of the issues. And that takes a lot of strength. But let's finish it out. There's only about a few more verses.
Verse 3, it reads, Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine in the innermost parts of thy house. Thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Behold, surely thus shall the man be blessed that fear of Yehovah. Yehovah bless
That's the best man. I went ahead of myself. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yehovah bless thee out of Zion, and see thou the good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. And see thy children's children. Peace be upon Yisrael. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right, so to be able to see your children's children, to see your grandchildren, and to see them, and when you really see your children, you don't see them when they just be born, and you're talking about your grandchildren. You see them when they got mature and grown up. That's when you really see them. When they're a toddler, you say, well, I don't know how this boy or this girl are going to turn out. But once they reach maturity, then you can say, I'm blessed or not. So, and I did the right thing. God's working in my life or not. So it's after a period of time. So one of the things is that there's so many questions dealing with this particular Sidra or Shimini, that all questions will not be answered, but all answers always address a question. So I hope you got something out of what I said, any mistakes from my own. And I say, Shalom Aleichem, early Shabbat Shalom.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Nasik. I wanted to ask you a question, right? And I don't know if you would have been able to answer this, or
I just said all questions may not be answered.
but I'm sure you
all
will have
answers,
an answer.
all answers address a question.
So so when we read in Leviticus chapter 9, and it talks about the offerings and the offerings that Aaron had to make for sin offering, and I believe a burnt offering. He had to offer up a goat, a bull calf for a sin offering, and then he had to offer up something else for the burnt offering.
His offering was just the opposite of the people's offering.
Yeah, a lamb or something like that, right?
Yes, sir.
And then he had to do a bull and a lamb or something like that. So, but when it gets to the people, and I believe their burnt offering, it says offer up an ox. So now by the definition of an ox in Webster's dictionary, or any of the dictionaries that we have out there in the Western understanding of it, it says that an ox is a castrated bull, right? So we know that the Most High God, we can't offer up to the Most High God anything that's defective, anything that's crushed or anything or maimed or anything like that. So what do you think is the real meaning of an ox in terms of the what is being interpreted into English, rather than what we really know would be the animal?
Okay. Well, definitely it's a different breed, beefs, and it's actually a breed that you call ox.
Ox.
As opposed to bulls. But they're all related, but it's just a breed.
It's a breed.
And so for us, for most Western civilization, since they didn't really have oxen in that part of the world too much.
Right.
They had cattle and they had bulls, but not on the level of oxen, And like in America, they had buffaloes and stuff like that.
Right.
But
right.
Over
there they have water buffaloes that were domesticated. So that's sort of like what I gave an opinion on it, that maybe it would be something like a water buffalo or something like that.
And actually, the water buffaloes, like especially when you're in India, they call them water buffaloes. Those would be the oxes, and they walk down the street on their own. Some of them be walking down the street by themselves,
Right.
So and most of the Asian countries too, they use them not only for riding and stuff like that, but they also carrying and lifting beasts of burden. So those are the oxen that they talk about there. Now, and what they actually did in Western civilization, they castrate a bull to make them stronger like ox, because they don't have that kind of animal over there. So if you have oxen, you don't need that, but that's not what they normally dealt with.
And the bison weren't yet domesticated.
Right, and they really never really tried to domesticate bisons directly.
Right.
So though they had like a crossbreed that they had between European bulls that sometimes had no horns with the certain ox breeds here because of the winters. In the winters, the European bulls can survive. In the winters that they had, like in Colorado and different places when they had these cattle drives.
Right.
So and then longhorn steer is also that's where they come up with the longhorn steer and stuff like that. And those are different animals that was basically crossbred. But an ox is definitely a different, unique animal. In the book, it's not a castrated bull that I talk about in the book, and you was right in the sense that if it was castrated, then it's maimed, it's a blemish, and it could never be offered up.
So then
and it also recognized that people where we at, what kind of folks we are.
Absolutely. So then the next discussion I got into with a brother was whether or not our ancestors ever castrated animals, right? And to my opinion, or is it wrong for someone to castrate the animals? Because some of the main reasons why they also castrate bulls is because you can't really have two bulls in a pen together at the same time. So you really only need one bull to impregnate all the females, the cows or whatever it is that you need. So a lot of times they're castrated for work purposes and so that they won't be bucking up against each other all the time and kill each other and spear each other with those horns. Would it be permissible for a farmer from the perspective of Torah to castrate his bull in order to just make him a work animal so he won't be as aggressive? Me and him had a difference of opinion, so I'm bringing it to you.
Okay. Well, that's mine. I'm not sure. So this is just my opinion on this. All right, because I didn't check the sources and the arguments on it and the reference to that. All right, so this is from Crown Prince himself. That I would believe that it would not be permissible because the righteous man regard the life of his beast. And the thing is that if that would be the case, then we could just cut off one leg of the animal, could say heal them up and say, look here, that's all we need to eat tonight. That's enough for most of our household. We don't need the whole animal right now because it's gonna spoil, waste, and everything like that. So we're just gonna chop off a leg, and he could still live with that, and hop around on 3 legs, and we eat the leg and make a meal out of that, especially in hard times. So we weren't supposed to be malicious, against the animals. So to castrate and the animals, as well as us as human beings, was told to be fruitful and multiply. So you cutting off a command that God had not only given to human beings, but to be the animals to be fruitful and multiply. So that would be my assessment, that it would be a violation.
But then wouldn't that go for rats and insects and things that might be pests to us?
That's why we never had to talk about murdering an animal or killing the animal. We have a word, called, shakat, to slaughter. We slaughter. So that means we're gonna slaughter them for a purpose. We ain't gonna, make them like futuristic stuff. We're gonna slaughter them for a purpose. That's why later on in the book of Genesis, you read a thing about so and so found some mules, and it was talking about genuine animals with diverse kinds, because you will wind up, coming up with a hybrid, and most hybrids cannot reproduce. So that's why it was a law about not letting our cattle gender with a diverse kind, because you could come with a certain hybrid, so you don't have this or that. Now, when we talk about donkey, even though it's related to the horse, it's a different animal altogether. But when you talk about a mule, then a mule is a crossbreed. And that's because some people want the strength of a mule, but the speed of a horse.
You mean the strength of the donkey and the speed of the horse?
Oh, yeah, straight. Yeah, straight. Yeah, they're right. Yeah.
All right. Yes, and that's forbidden.
Right.
And that's forbidden. So, okay, my opinion on it was a little bit different. I thought, but like I said, this is all opinions at this point. And but you made your points. And he made some of the points that you made. So if he hears this, I don't want him to think like I'm only taking your word because you're one of my teachers and I didn't take his word. It was just a discussion we were having back and forth in terms of what we could do with our animals, whether we could castrate them or not. So then, in terms of
that's why one of the things, that's why I mentioned about the righteous man regardeth the life of his beast. That means you're concerned. And today they got what they call cruelty to animals. They got that kind of stuff going on today. All right. And if he told not the muzzle and the ox when he treading the corn. You're saying that you can't put him on a diet while he working for you.
Right.
So the ox is actually, he could eat as much as he could eat while he walking around treading that corn out for you and working that millstone.
Right.
So if you can consider that, and then if we say give them water so that their animals and their children and stuff could drink, then it's important that we have in Torah, we have a very sensitive nature towards the animals.
So then how did we end up with eunuchs in the Tanakh? Or in Israel?
That didn't say we made them. They didn't say we made them now. They didn't say we made them. Because you might have a stranger or somebody you purchase, because you cannot, when you buy a Hebrew servant and a servant, he's only a servant for X amount of time. He might have been sold for a situation.
For theft or something.
But you might have brought somebody from, Assyria, Persia or India. You might have brought one of them guys that happened to be passing through or Egyptian that happened to be passing through the neighborhood, and that was his lot already. Not that you're going to do it to him, but that was his lot already. And so you're going to have, and then what are you going to learn? You're going to learn your way of life. And suppose also the Kohen purchased one of them guys. He become part of the Kohen household, and he could eat of the food that his household could eat because he's part of the household, but he may never reproduce.
Okay. See, good conversation. Toda Rabbi Nasik, thank you for your knowledge, your wisdom, and your understanding. I pray that the Most High God will continue to be with you, bless you, and protect you. And just for everyone out there, just stay tuned for the commercial of our upcoming event on May 27th, our Unity Shabbat. Shalom, shalom. May the Most High God bless each and every one of you. And shalom to you, Nasik.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom, family. Congregation Bay D.C.B presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. Date, May 27, 2023. Location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. To contact us for more information, you can contact us at 347-622-9090 or on our email, info@baydcb.org. Once again, Congregation Bay D.C.B presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. The date is May 27, 2023. The location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can contact us at 347-622-9090 on our email, info@baydcb.org. This is a time of praise and joy and coming together between brothers and sisters. All are invited. Come out with your best spirit of praise. Hallelujah.